Hey guys, welcome to Haunted Tales from the Old Rocking Chair. I'm your host, Christina. Few announcements. I wanted to personally thank everybody. We made our goal of 1,500 members this week. My mind is like totally blown from that. I don't know what to say most of the time of the outpouring of support and love for the channel. Also, the YouTube channel is growing. We made a jump from like 8 viewers this week, which was amazing. I want to thank everybody for that. We have a really good show for you planned tonight. We've got a variety of things going on. Hi, Melanie. Hi, Jerry. So, I'm really excited for that. Next week, I have a special broadcast planned. I am going to do, because it's kind of a milestone, next week is my 12th podcast since I started. So, and it's the last one before All Hallows Eve. So I thought I'd do something a little unique that I haven't done before, which is a best of episode. I'm going to go through all the stories that I've narrated so far and pick my favorites. So if you guys have got a couple favorites that are listening tonight, make sure you let me know so I can consider them. Because you guys are as much the channel as I am. So I want to include you in those decisions. So if anybody's got a favorite story out there that wants to be included, let me know. Because I have done a lot. I haven't done the actual calculations, but I've done a lot of stories in the past 12 weeks. Or 11 weeks, so I think that'll be interesting. It'll be a little something different than just new stories every week. It'll be like a highlight reel. Trying to think of anything else. I'm thinking about doing a Twitch live at some point. Once I figure that out, because like I'm old and have a hard time with technology sometimes. Hopefully I'll be able to figure that out to do like a live, a live broadcast, a rebroadcast of the podcast, just to get it out there on that social media platform, because I hear it's a good platform. So, all right, so it's about that time. Let me switch it over and we'll get started.
Network would like to welcome you to tonight's special broadcast. This work is protected by Creative Commons license. And now, a word from our sponsors. The Skeleton Key. This mystical shop, found exclusively on Facebook, is stationed in Blossom, Texas. Purchase all of your very own unique religious, spiritual, and metaphysical items, to include the beginner altar kits. Find them today on Facebook. Remember, you've always had the key. Staunton, Virginia this fall to experience the creepiest place around. Take part in the Ghost of Staunton Tours, produced by Marty Siebel and the residents of Staunton. Ticket prices range from $8 to $13. Private group rates are available. Learn more and investigate the tales of Mary Baldwin from the Mary Baldwin College, the Old Western State Mental Asylum, and much more. For tour times, ticket prices, and dates, visit their website at www.ghostofstaunton.com or 540-448-2743. Available tour dates are limited and filling up fast. Make sure to secure your reservations for this fall season. Get out of the house and become a part of history. The Ghost of Staunton Tours, only in Virginia's Shenandoah Valley. CDC guidelines are followed, and for questions, please visit www.ghostofstaunton.com or call 540-448-2743.
Welcome to the haunted tales from the old rocking chair. And now your host, Christina Spencer.
Well, hello there. Come on in and get cozy by the fireplace. Let me get settled into my old rocking chair, and I'll tell you a couple stories. Haunting stories. Stories that are not for the faint of heart. Some of these stories may not be about hauntings per se, but nonetheless will haunt you. Because after all, some of the most scary things in life are not ghosts and demons, but the people we cross on the street. If you're brave enough, keep listening. If not, get up and leave now, because you'll never be the same. Don't say I didn't warn you. Welcome to the haunting stories from the old rocking chair. I Think the Water Plant is Haunted. Written by Big Country Red, 1993. Hello everyone. I'm a water treatment plant operator. Been doing this about a decade. I've been the night shift guy my whole career. The night shifts are normally quiet and can be boring if everything is going to plan. My plant has a few different buildings. The oldest is 60 or so years old. The main building I spend a majority of the shift in is only roughly 20 years old. For more backstory of the area, this used to be a booming, energized area. This area was littered with railroad tracks and drifters coming and going on the trains of yesteryear. Our farms and factories were very bountiful back then. Now that you all understand that, you must also understand that with the success in the area, there is also a darkness. From the settling of the area, wars with natives, and even into the 30s and 40s, of people being killed in train wrecks and bad business deals, the grounds are laced with darkness. The silence of the night shift can be eerie all on its own. Lots of bumps and bangs in a dimly lit darkness. On the night I'm now about to speak about, everything started out as normal. I came in around sunset, got the nightly passover, and began my work. Around midnight, I had to do my rounds around the property while getting the nightly pump numbers. I made my rounds with nothing but a flashlight around the main building. The oldest building is a good walking distance away from the main building. I set out in the dark, headed for that building. I must also add that we aren't in the nicest area of town, however. I'm a big guy and can hold my own. As I made my walk, I got an uneasy feeling. I had gotten them before, but I have a job to do and nothing came out of it. I rounded the corner and unlocked the door. As I did this, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Again, I have a job to do though. I opened the door, and there stood nothing. I walked in and proceeded to get my numbers. I turned around to walk to the exit. As I turned to shut the door, I looked up down the hallway to see a woman in pure white looking at me through the other door. I almost jumped out of my boots and pissed myself a little. I fell backwards. As I came back to reality, I once again made eye contact with the entity. As I met her gaze, everything in me said, "Hey, your life's in danger, buddy." Her face distorted and started to shift around. I was now frozen as she shifted into what looked like an Indian warrior. His eyes were glowing. As I got to my feet, he had shifted into this huge wolf creature. The growls were chilling, to say the least. It snarled and then ran right towards me. I had no time to even shut the door. I ran as fast as I could, screaming bloody murder. I felt like it was trying to bite my backside. It got a hold of my pants leg and tore it to shreds. I stumbled, rolled, but somehow managed to come up on my feet. I darted into the main building, and as I shut the door, I felt a hard thud on the other side. I locked the doors and cowered down inside. I could hear the thing casing the building, growling and scratching at the walls. I got the courage to look out the window, just to end up face to face with a white lady again. I had the police come and sit with me till the sun came up. No one else has seen the white lady since. It's still quite freaky, but I still have a job to do. No One Believes, written by Anubis Kami. I remember when I was around the age of 4, my family and I lived in a small apartment on the 4th floor, which was pretty high. The apartment building was full of stupid people like drug addicts and other low-life criminals. There was no other kids in the unit, so I mainly spent my time playing with toys. One night, after my mother turned off the lights for bedtime, the whole family went to sleep. I woke up in the middle of the night around 2 a.m. I was pretty thirsty, so I was going to grab a cup of water from the kitchen. But as I was pulling off my blanket, I heard noises. Noises coming from the other side of the house. Being a stupid toddler, I didn't think anything of it, so I got up and walked out of my bedroom. The moon was lighting up the room through the open sliding door to the veranda. But then I came to the terrifying realization that the sliding door was supposed to be closed. I knew this because I was the one who closed it before bed. But at that moment I heard these noises again, and they were coming from the kitchen. I put 2 and 2 together and realized that someone was in the home. I tried tiptoeing to my parents' room, but I looked behind me, and what I saw scared me. It was a man in a costume. He looked at me and grabbed me. He was pulling my hair and he put his hand on my mouth. But I broke out of his grip and ran to my mother's room. I was too scared to say anything. The next morning I told my mother everything, but she told me it was all just a wild nightmare. I tried to tell my dad, but he said the same. Only I know what happened, but no one believes me. I will never forget the sack he wore over his head. And the thing that still bothers me is how did he manage to get to the 4th floor? The door was locked and there were no windows. So did he just climb the entire building? And if he did, why pick me? My grandpa's parrot keeps shouting weird stuff at me. Written by Help Creepy Landlady. I guess I should give you all some context on this before I get started. My grandpa loves animals, and he's had some pretty strange ones in his time. He had dogs and cats, but he prefers exotic animals like snakes and birds of paradise. Apparently, he once had a pet spider monkey, but that was before I was born. He lives on a farm now, and as a kid, I used to love going to visit him. I'd get to feed the chickens, play with his 2 dogs, and ride on the little russet-colored pony he had called Sir Jimmy. It was a pretty idyllic upbringing. I remember loathing the sound of my parents' car coming up the driveway because I knew it was time to go home, and I'd have to wait another month or so before I'd be able to come back. I never asked too much about what happened to my grandmother, but from what I've gathered over the years, she left not long after my mother was born, and they haven't heard from her since. My mom once hinted that there was a history of mental illness on that side of the family, and that it was possible that her mom's postnatal depression drove her to abandon them or worse. My grandpa never remarried, and I don't think he dated another woman after my grandmother left him. I never bring it up with him because I don't want to open any old wounds. Since I went to college, I've not been able to visit him as often as I used to, but I told him I'd stay with him for a whole summer once I graduated. The pandemic has made everything a lot more complicated, and I nearly decided to abandon the idea because I didn't want to put my grandpa at risk. In the end, my parents convinced me to go because I could drive, and it meant that I could safely get groceries for him. They worry about him living on his own since he's over an hour's drive away from my parents' house, and he's fiercely independent. He doesn't ask for help even when he needs it. The pandemic did mean I had to delay my trip, however, so I didn't arrive here until the start of September. When I first walked through the door, it felt like nothing much had changed, although the house was in a bit of a state. Everything was covered in a fine layer of dust, and there were dishes piled up in the sink, and still with molded food clinging to them. The smell in the kitchen was pretty unbearable, if I'm honest. My grandpa seemed well enough, though, and he was wearing clean clothes, so I tried not to worry myself too much. He had dropped a bit of weight, but he was in good spirits and totally cognizant. I told myself that I had plenty of time to get the house in order anyway. For the first week or so, I got stuck in with cleaning around the house and stocking up the kitchen. I was so engrossed in getting everything up to scratch that I didn't really pay too much attention to my grandpa's parrot, which is the only pet he has left now that he's too old to tend to the farm animals anymore. My parents were the ones who brought him the parrot, since he'd always talked about getting one, and he thought being able to talk with it might help him keep mentally stimulated. He had his heart set on a scarlet macaw because of their plumage, but in the end, my parents bought him an African gray parrot, since they're the most competent talkers. Staying true to a sense of humor, my grandpa named the parrot Bob, because of his habit of bobbing his head up and down when he got excited. It was about a week into my trip that Bob spoke up. I was in the kitchen sorting out some of the canned foods when I called out to my grandpa in the living room and asked what he wanted for dinner. "Shut up! Just shut up!" I heard him call from the other room, his voice hoarse as though he had been shouting for some time. I was in shock, so I asked him again in a softer tone, only to be told to shut my damn mouth. I decided to go check on him, and as I was walking through the hallway, I noticed Bob fidgeting in his cage. "Shut up," he snapped at me, in my grandpa's voice. It was a really surreal moment, and out of sheer nervousness, I started laughing. This apparently set the parrot off, because it embarked on a barrage of insults that I won't repeat here. All the while, I couldn't stop laughing, and by the time my grandpa found me, I was practically crying with laughter. "Oh, Bob," my grandpa said, wiggling his finger at the cage to try and calm the bird down. "That's no way to speak to our guest." My grandpa flashed me an apologetic smile and followed me into the kitchen to help sort out dinner. The whole incident seemed harmless enough until about a week ago. I don't know whether you've ever stayed in the countryside, but the nights out there are about as dark as they come. Sometimes when I'd sleep over at my grandpa's farm, I felt like the sheer weight of that darkness was physically pressing down on me. It wasn't necessarily an unpleasant feeling, but there was something unnerving about the almost impenetrable type of blackness. It was into the blackness that I awoke to the sound of a woman screaming. "No!" I heard from downstairs. "Please stop!" It sounded as though her cries for help were mingled with weeping. I was paralyzed with fear, but summed up my courage to grab my dressing gown, turned my phone's flashlight on, and rushed downstairs. I had no idea what I encountered on my way down. When I got to the base of the stairs, I could still hear the sound of a woman whimpering, and I followed the sound down the hallway. It was the damn parrot. I put my hand on my hip and wagged my finger. "Bob," I said, "you scared the shit out of me. Please don't do that again." He only responded by bouncing up and down, so feeling relieved yet exhausted, I turned around to go back to bed. As I was about to start up the stairs, however, something stopped me dead in my tracks. "He's going to kill me," the parrot screamed, with such visceral fear that the hairs on my arms prickled up. I swiveled around to check that it was still the parrot, since the sound felt so human. The light from my phone glanced off of the parrot's glassy eyes as he turned his head left and then right. I wondered if there might be something wrong with him, so I decided I'd wake up my grandpa and see what we should do. As I climbed the staircase, every creak sent a shock wave up my spine. I haven't felt this shook up since I was a kid, and I caught a glimpse of Grandpa putting down one of the sick pigs. When I reached his bedroom, I turned the doorknob as quietly as possible, as not to give him a fright. I crept into the room and started walking towards the bed. When it struck me, I couldn't hear him breathing. My grandpa is a heavy sleeper, and he snores almost constantly throughout the night, so this put me on edge. I rushed to the side of the bed, thinking the worst, only to find that he wasn't there. I shone my flashlight around the room, but there was no sign of him. In a panic, I went on a tear through the top floor of the house, turning on all the lights and checking all the rooms. He wasn't nowhere to be found. I went down the stairs again and caught sight of the parrot, who kept taking me in with sideway glances from those reptilian eyes. I don't know what possessed me to do this, but I felt compelled to approach his cage and take a closer look at him. To my surprise, the parrot seemed receptive and almost calmed by my presence. I reached through the cage, and he let me stroke his head, which was downy and soft. I don't know how long I stood there petting him, but I remember feeling at ease. By the time I felt the sharp corner of his beak sinking into my fleshy tip of my finger, I was already in a trance. In a split second, I was reeling backwards and lurching away from his cage as he fluffed out his feathers and raised his wings in an unmistakable display of aggression. "He's coming," the parrot screamed, bobbing up and down with increasing fervor. "He's coming!" I heard something wooden slam in the living room, and out of instinct, I trained my flashlight on the source of the sound. All I could see was my grandpa standing upright in the corner of the living room and staring right at me. He was so silent and still that at first I thought he might be sleepwalking. "Grandpa?" I called out, my voice trembling. Without a sound, he started walking towards me with his eyes trained on me and his head turned slightly downwards, so the rings under his eyes seemed like two dark pools that my flashlight couldn't penetrate. It wasn't until he was about 2 feet away from me that he smiled and his expression softened. "Oh," he said, "it's you," as though he had just seen someone in the street that he recognized. "Come on, my dear," he said, patting me on the shoulder. "You should be getting to bed. You've been working so hard for your old grandpa." With that, he ushered me upstairs and back into my bedroom, even going as far to stand in the doorway and shut the door. I wanted desperately to chalk his actions up to the onset of senility, but there was something so menacing and deliberate in the way that he approached me that night, as if he thought I might be someone else. What would he have done if he hadn't recognized me? I don't want to really think about that too much. I didn't get a wink of sleep that night, and I swear I could still hear him shuffling around downstairs long after he'd gone to bed. I couldn't get the image of him standing in the corner of that room out of my mind. The next day, I didn't broach the subject, and neither did he. We barely spoke the whole day, and the parrot spent most of the day sleeping. An endless series of questions seared themselves into my brain and tormented me for the next few days. I wasn't sure whether to get in touch with my parents, forget about the incident altogether, or handle it myself. In the end, I came to a conclusion that the answers I sought could be found in the corner of that room. The only issue is that my grandpa is almost always in the living room or somewhere nearby, so it was difficult to find a window of opportunity when he wouldn't be able to see me. Luckily today, I convinced him to take a short walk outside to get some fresh air, and I seized the opportunity to finally check what was in the corner of the room. I spent ages agonizing over the wallpaper, seeing if there were holes or any indications of anything unusual, knowing in the back of my mind that I had only a precious few moments. I could feel the blood pounding in my head as I searched, but I couldn't find anything. It was then that I looked down and saw the corner of the carpet, which looked as though it had been shifted ever so slightly. When I pulled up the corner, I discovered a hatch in the wooden floor. I don't remember my grandpa ever mentioning that this house had a cellar, but the hatch had no dust on it and must have been used relatively recently. It took all of my self-control not to bend down or wrench open the door. I'm thankful that I didn't give in to the temptation, because not long after I made the discovery, I heard the back door slam and my grandpa's shuffling gait as he walked through the kitchen. He thanked me for the suggestion, since the walk had done him some good, and then settled into his leather armchair. I didn't think he suspected me just yet. What should I do? I'm going to be here at least until Thanksgiving, and I don't want my imagination to get the better of me. But I have an uneasy feeling about everything that's been going on. Should I call my parents? Or just forget all this ever happened? Any advice would be greatly appreciated. The Old Man at the Door, written by Per A. Normal. Over the past few years living in this house, many strange things have happened. Mostly noises, loud banging or knocks at the windows, the manhole cover in the ceiling being open constantly even when there's been no storms, stuff like that. I'm a bit antisocial and I don't necessarily answer the door if I'm not expecting anyone. We never have unexpected visitors and our neighbor has our mobile number, so a knock at the door is usually always a door-to-door something or other, salesperson or religious nut. One day I heard a knock at the door in the morning. I was working and my kids were still asleep. I peeked out the window and there was an old man there and he was standing awkwardly in the entranceway. I decided he didn't look like a psychopath, nor did he seem like he was going to give me a Jesus pamphlet, so I decided to answer the door and see what he wanted. He apologized to me for knocking because he just noticed my kids asleep in their room through the side window. Then he asked me if he could pick some of the fruit from the vines in our front yard. I thought it was a super weird request, but didn't really care, so I said sure thing. I went into the room to check on the kids instinctively, and when I came back out of the room, he was gone. I never even noticed a car. Not a big deal, I know, but before this happened another day when I was checking on the kids, also early in the morning, I had just woken up and again was the only person awake. I peeked out the window from our kids' room, and through the window I saw a tall, lanky, very old man at our door. I genuinely had no idea if it's the same old man because I have pretty bad face blindness, and this was months earlier. I held my breath and watched him through the window. He didn't knock, nor did he seem like he was planning to knock. He instead was sort of taking side steps and looking at our flower bed, which was full of weeds, LOL. He barely looked towards the front door at all, and just kind of calmly walked around to the very small area, nowhere near the fruit vine, by the way, just near the front door. Because he hadn't knocked, I was super confused. I watched him for a few minutes, but before I decided to confront him and ask what the frick, my kid's room is right next to the front door. It's maybe 2 meters from it, which is about 7 feet. I walked the 3 or so steps from my kid's door to the front door and swung it open. No one was there. We have a bay-top window showing the side of the house in the backyard, so I could instantly see he wasn't in the backyard of the side of the house. I walked out the front, down the short path, onto my driveway, and then onto the road, constantly looking back to make sure no one snuck in the front door. No cars were driving, no neighbors had anyone at their door, and I even checked the other side of the house. The dude had literally vanished into thin air. No idea what this is about, and maybe this isn't the right sub, but I thought I would share my story. The Yoshi Cart, written by Awesome Oofer. So when I was maybe 6 or 7, I got this Mario Kart RC car for Christmas. What happened was that we got one of Mario, but when I tried to use it, it didn't work. I was pretty sad, but my mom said that we could go back to the shop and get another one. So we went, and we asked for a replacement. However, there was no more of Mario. They were completely out of stock. I was pretty sad, but they told us there was a Yoshi one, so we got that instead. It worked, and I was happy, and I at least got it over nothing. Everything was fine for months. I would always leave it in my wardrobe, but in the morning I woke up to it being right next to my bed. And I knew this wasn't a prank because my mom told me that one night she heard the sound of it driving. She went to go check and the RC remote was on the top of the wardrobe, completely out of me or my brother's reach. And it wasn't even on, it was just the car that was on. She ended up turning it off and going back to bed. But the Yoshi toy kept appearing right next to my bed. We always closed the wardrobe, and when the toy appeared next to my bed, the wardrobe would still be closed. Eventually, my mom gave it to her boyfriend, and it would stay on the shelf, just staring. Nothing ever happened with the toy being at her boyfriend's house, but whenever I looked at it, it would just haunt me of the memory I had of the toy. This isn't the only experience we have had, as my mom has other stories of us being asleep and hearing footsteps in our room, or some sort of shadow entity in the hallway. But this is the one that I have experienced, and I will never forget it. By the way, if you would like to use the story in the video, I'm completely fine with it as long as you include the channel in the description. Haunted Gym? I don't know what to think anymore. Written by Gag Me. This is the first of many stories about strange experiences at my gymnastics facility. I can and will post more, so keep watching. Note, names have been changed and I refer to myself as OP in the dialogue. Now, I know what you're thinking. OP, a haunted gym. Come on, this is supposed to be nonfiction. But believe me, I would have thought I was crazy reading this too. I've always been a skeptic, but this really changed me. I'm the person who loves science and can always find a logical explanation for something, even when it's a huge stretch. But no, I'm not joking. These experiences changed me and my team forever. You believe I'm not crazy yet? Well, that's good. I can finally tell you my story. I've been doing gymnastics for about 9 years at this point, and I'm competing in level 8 this year. But this story begins about a year and a half ago in November of 2017. Competition season was rapidly approaching and plans were being made to move our gym across town before the month was out, so we were working harder than usual in the gym. Our team was burning out and we really needed to remember why we love the sport so much. My floor coaches, Gabby and Maya, sat us all down one day to have a team chat. Brooke, Abby, Sydney, Emma, Charlie, Elena, and I sat in our usual semicircle at their feet. I can tell you you're losing it. I am too. So I propose a break. After Friday's practice, we'll have another sleepover. This may be our last chance in this gym. Everyone, of course, loved Gabby's proposal. All of our past sleepovers had been some of the funniest experiences at the gym, and they had really brought us together. This one was to be no exception. My teammates all agreed to bring drinks, games, and of course food. We're going to make this the best sleepover ever, exclaimed Emma. The day arrived, and we're all itching to get practice over with so we can party. We listened to Charlie's new song titled I Got Two Boobsicles. It was ridiculous, but we loved her songs and her strange, twisted 11-year-old brain. It was an average practice filled with laughs in between exercise after exercise. The time finally came for us to stay. First on the agenda, wiffle ball. We split into teams and played our hearts out. As I'm up to bat, I swing and hit. I throw my bat aside and I hear a scream. Brooke is on the ground, hands over her face, looking like she'd just seen a ghost. She took her hands away and her right eye was bright red. "OP, you idiot," she shouted, and almost giggling. All I saw was the bat coming at my eye and then the pain. I had hit her with my flying bat. Wiffle ball was almost over after that, and with the collegiate softball talents of Gabby and the pure stubbornness of Sydney and myself, we had managed to squeeze in a victory. Next up was just some dancing and our annual ugly dance-off. We all spread out across the floor in front of the tall, vast mirrors we used to practice our routines. That was cut short because soon after the music had started playing, Elena noticed something was wrong. Guys, she shouted until one of us decided that maybe she had to say was more important than doing the worm. She shut off the music and turned on the light. "What the hell do you want, Elena?" we all questioned. "Those haven't been there, have they? No one did that. How come we've never noticed it?" she asked, her voice slightly shaking. All of us confused, we stared at her like she was crazy. We thought maybe she was crazy until she slowly raised her hand, pointing at the top of the mirror. There they were, long, thin, white handprints all across the top of the mirror. There were some very large claw-like ones, upside down, twisted all over the place. Some of them were tiny, almost as if a baby had crawled across the mirror. They too were twisted, upside down, and in no special pattern. It was like I could feel the hands crawling up and down my back, and the chills sent me to the ground. We were all floored, staring in horror and awe. "Did one of you do that? Come on, don't scare us. This is total bullshit," I said. I knew in my heart it wasn't any of them, but my skepticism prevented me from believing what I was seeing. "None of us did that, OP. There's no way anyone could do that without standing on something." Abby had always been like an older sister to me. She was strong and fearless, but now even her voice was highly pitched and quivering with fear. We all sat there almost silently for a couple minutes, just processing the image before us. Being tweens and teens, each of us took out our phones and snapped a shot of the prints. In a vain attempt to lighten the mood, Emma said, "The big ones look like a Sheldon made them." We were too creeped out to finally appreciate the humor, but the lighter mood came over us like a blanket. "The little ones are definitely a little girl, like the girls in The Shining," Charlie remarked. I dubbed her Lucy, but that wasn't quite right. Sydney suggested Lucille, and something about that sent a chill up my spine. "Lucille," repeated Maya, and I could tell she too had felt what I had. "I can't look at them anymore. Let's get rid of them," Brooke suggested. This kind of paranormal activity affected her the most. She had always believed in ghosts and grew up in an old house with many experiences. I had chalked up to coincidence or some other phenomenon. now wasn't so sure about that anymore. Gabby and Maya grabbed the cleaning supplies and a couple of step ladders, and soon the mirrors looked as if no hands had ever touched them. Scared but determined to keep up with the fun of the sleepover, we decided to play hide and go seek, but it's done in the pitch black of the gym at night. The only light coming in was the dim beams of the occasional headlights on the road outside streaming through the dusty garage door windows. Rounds went by, and my spots were legendary. I've always been great at finding tight spaces and corners no sane person would think to check. The round, when it happened, was no exception. Let's pause the story real quick, and I'll give you a layout of the gym. When you walk into the front door, there's a lobby. The lobby enters into a seating area. The seating area is next to a small carpeted zone we call the preschool area. To the front of both of these is the spring floor, and towards the left side are the vaults. Further to the left is the trampoline and some other mats and storage. The vaults naturally have runways that extend all the way back to the back of the gym. On the far left, past the trampoline area, are the parallel bars. Behind the floor on the opposite side of the runway are the bars, and the far right of the bars are the beams. Littered throughout are piles of mats and other drills. Now this may seem fairly arbitrary, but frankly a bit confusing now, but I promise you it will make sense later. This is what made the round absolutely spine-chilling. Gabby, Maya, and Abby were all grouped together to be the seekers. They retreated to the lobby to count as we scrambled in the darkness to find a good spot. I chose to hide in the darkest corner of the preschool area under a small and colorful beam and covered up by a thin mat. I made sure I had a peephole. Everyone else scattered and hid, and after all the noises of moving mats had died down, I swore I heard a faint noise. I heard it again, but this time it was almost in my ear. It was my name. It sounded like a hissing snake. Although the seekers were still counting, I felt that I couldn't be loud, even though the voice had sounded so close to me. I thought it was Emma calling out for me from the right edge of the floor just 15 feet away. I whispered back, "What?" at the lowest volume I could, so I thought she could hear me. I only whispered once, and there was no response. I never could call out again because the exact moment the seekers emerged from the lobby and into the waiting darkness. I watched through my peephole as they went straight to the trampoline area, talking a little bit, but still scared. After all, it was dark, and we never had the best feeling about the gym at night. Tonight, particularly, I had a worse feeling than any other time we'd ever slept over. I watched the seekers' figures move from the trampoline area to the vaults, and then slowly walk down the runway. My spying was interrupted by a figure in the corner of my vision. There was at least one human-like shape slowly making its way across the floor towards the vault runway where Gabby, Maya, and Abby were still sneaking along. I was a little mad that Emma was planning to scare the coaches without me, but I decided to remain hidden. I didn't come out. I hid my face for 1 second, and as I ducked back into my secret place, I heard a sound. The sound that still sends chills down my spine. It sounded like a herd of animals crawling down the runway at a sprint. The girls had made a plot to scare the coaches without me. I looked out as soon as I heard the noise and had to cover myself up immediately. Then I looked back out. What I saw still haunts me to this day. It wasn't my teammates out there at all. It was nothing. There was no one there. The sound was reverberating throughout the gym, but all I saw when I looked out was the gym as it was, except the runway had a slight blacker sheen. Maybe it was the figures. I hadn't looked long enough to tell. As soon as I was back under my mat, I heard a thud and a set of screams, followed by some sobs of terror. The stamping stopped. The only thing I had left to cling to was my hope of not being found, so I remained in my spot as the coaches and Abby lay at the end of the runway in pure disbelief and terror. They had turned on the flashlight, but no one had left their hiding spot. The gym as it had been, no mats moved or shadowy figures, just the gym. After a minute of me hyperventilating under the mat, I decided it was time to see if what I swear I had seen was real. Gabby, Maya, and Abby were in the exact place they had been minutes before, still in a heap on the runway sobbing. Everyone else had come over. "Guys, come on. I thought we had a no scaring rule during hide and seek. You remember what happened last time," I said, still doubting what I had definitely seen with my eyes. Though all that had happened, I was still skeptical. Maybe my eyes had been playing tricks on me, and there really had been no girls on the runway before. "No one did that, OP. I was under a mat by the bars the whole time." Brooke's response really made it seem real. I was beside the trampoline in the dark corner, and I swear to God, your mother, anything you want to, then I didn't move," Elena added with a tremor. Sydney, who was too scared to talk, just shook her head. "Sid and I were behind the parallel bars. We thought it was you, Emma." "That's something you would do," Charlie said. I had forgotten about Emma being near me. "No, it wasn't us. You watched me come out from under the beams. I saw Emma crawl out across the floor. I thought it was her." Emma seemed a little angry when I said that. "No, I was there, in those mats, the entire time, I swear. Across my heart, I never moved or spoke even once." That struck a chord for me. "Wait, you never said anything? Then who whispered to me?" When I asked this, I knew it wasn't anyone else. They were all well over 50 feet from my spot other than Emma. It couldn't be explained. "No one whispered to you, O.P." "What I didn't get is why you kept shouting. You realize you're supposed to hide, right?" Brooke asked. I had no recollection of shouting anything, just whispering what, in the smallest voice I could muster. Even though I swore all I had done was whisper once, all the others confirmed that they had heard me repeatedly shout 3 times. None of this night had made any sense, and the night was still young. Let me stop you there for 1 minute. Now I know I sound crazy. You'll see, even me, the girl who had always thought everything was concrete and scientific, couldn't possibly find an explanation. Now back to our regular scheduled story. We all sat there for another hour, just feeling each other's presence. No one spoke, but we were comforted by the shared warmth. We thought it had hit us before, but after the reflection, reality was really starting to set in. We all went over in exact detail what we had been doing at the time of the event. I started. I was over in the far corner under the beam and mat, doing nothing. I had a peephole, but wasn't looking out. Naturally, we were suspicious of Charlie and Sid since they were the closest, hiding just a few feet from the runway. Charlie claimed that they had stayed hidden behind 2 exercise balls under the parallel bar set. No one was in any state to lie at this point, so we believed them. Brooke was trapped between one large fluffy mat and another. I couldn't see anything. Then Gabby and Maya collapsed into view, then Abby on top. They were all screaming. I couldn't have made it down the runway and back to the spot in the time it took them to turn on the light. Her point, being quite valid, was accepted easily. All that was left was Elena, and she too hadn't moved and was far enough away for it to have been nearly impossible for her to be the culprit. That noise, that stampedes of hands and feet crawling along the dense carpeted foam, I can't get it out of my head. No human, not even all 6 of us girls, could have made that sound. It was a sound like no other, familiar but so otherworldly, unique, chilling, and terrifying. This event is a natural conclusion, right? Wrong. There's more. The night's still young after all. There's still so much more I can fit into just one story, so I'll spare you the details of us playing volleyball on the floor for an hour. But be prepared. As I said, the night was still young. After our volleyball tournament, Emma and Sydney collapsed with exhaustion on the trampoline. We took a bathroom break together for safety. Abby stayed behind. "What time is it?" Charlie asked. "My mom would kill me if we were up after midnight." "It's 3:30, I said. The devil's hour. And of course it had to be 3:33. I'll never forget the time. That was the time we heard pounding on the door, followed by a shrill screech. "Guys, you need to come out here. They're back. They're back." Abby screamed at us through the locked door. We were in a frenzy, and all of us sprinted out of the bathroom like a pack of dogs were chasing us. When we emerged into the gym, we were haunted by the sight before us. She was right, they were back, and they were impossibly different. But, Gabby, you cleaned them off. It was spotless. They were gone." Charlie stuttered in disbelief. She was saying what all of us were thinking. They had been gone, but returned, this time in a new, blood-curdling pattern. The handprints, those damn handprints, creeping across the mirrors, twisting, clawing, scratching my insides, along with the reflective finish of the mirror. It was like no feeling I've felt ever before. I was afraid for my life, but it was a fear of something there was no proof even existed. No one could believe what they were seeing. It was pure terror. There was something about the prints. They weren't just handprints. They were claws scraping the mirror. They were twisted upside down and backwards, and at no angle humanly possible. They struck fear in our hearts instantly. It was Gabby who broke the silence. I know this is crazy, but have you eyes? You saw, and I know for sure you felt the same thing we're all feeling. This is real. We needed to accept what we're all seeing. We weren't all crazy. All of this trying to crack it up to coincidence, seeing things, or simply someone's pranks, and now I really knew it. These things really were unexplainable by nature and humanity. Me, the skeptic, believing something is supernatural. The night had really changed me. But, as I said, the night was still young. After cleaning the mirrors again, so we weren't living in the shadow of the prince, we huddled in fluffy blankets and talked. We played cards until 5, and then finally got some sleep. It took a while to actually sleep. We would hear a tiny creak or a pipe go off, and it would nearly send us over the edge. Everything is scarier at night. It takes away our sense of sanity and sight. This night would continue even weeks, months, and years after it occurred. But finally we slept, still as the dead, until the morning sun seeped into those same dusty garage door windows. Saturday morning, practice the next day was uneventful, so I decided to hack Emma's phone. Charlie and I posed for way too many selfies. I scrolled through to find one to send to myself and dropped her phone into the concrete below. It had followed us into the light. The terror of last night came back to me. Emma, seeing her phone on the concrete, rushed over and picked it up. She began to retch, also horrified at the sight on the screen. On her phone had been a photograph of her asleep on the trampoline. I thought it was Sydney until I noticed her sleeping body in the back corner of the image. We had been on the floor all night. Not one of us had been over to the trampoline. But the worst thing about it, the absolute worst image that I could never, ever, ever get out of my head was the screen. The image of Emma sleeping and Sydney close by with a timestamp, November 11, 2017, 3:33 a.m. It's over now, but it was the most insane thing I've ever encountered. Advice for future reference is appreciated. Written by Pretty Thinker. Hi all. I'm new to the Reddit community. I've had a couple of accounts but never used them. I joined this subreddit to read all the paranormal stories I could. I never in a million years thought I would be posting here, but here I am. I apologize if it's not extremely well written or detailed. I am still processing and trying to make sense of it all. This is a repost. My first one was not formatted correctly. This is the edited version. However, since then, I'm sad to say that he is back and would very much appreciate any help. Let's start at the beginning. 2 months ago, my boyfriend does not interfere with the paranormal. He doesn't ask questions, and when I try to educate him or just talk about the endless experiences I've heard, seen, and had, he listens but doesn't let it affect him. And he never had any experiences prior. He believes, but to an extent. Not anymore. He went to sleep like normal and had a terrible nightmare. He had sleep paralysis before, and this was not that under any circumstances. He was going through dreams, inside of dreams, inside of dreams, inside of dreams. I'm not going to insert the literal message he sent me about one of the dreams he was in. I copied and pasted from my phone because I have an iPhone and my messages delete every 30 days, so I pasted it to the notes. A while ago, when I meant to post this story before other things had occurred, I was 5 dreams deep. It felt like at least 5. I thought I was waking up, but then I did that hand thing you told me, and that's how I figured out I wasn't awake. I was sitting in the game room with Sebastian, and we were watching TV. I really didn't mind being asleep because we were just watching TV. I just figured I'd just get out when I needed to. Then this guy came on the TV, and he was speaking straight. I turned to Sebastian, and he was gone. The guy started yelling at me to go to the door of the game room, which at this point was being banged on constantly, like someone was trying to get in. I held my head in my hands and was closing my eyes hard until I woke up again. This is kinda what most of the messages and phone calls from this day occurred. However, they weren't this detailed, and he doesn't log his dreams, and the memory of the most of them was fading. The one thing he could recall as a common theme was he kept encountering a man who was demanding, speaking in different languages, which I assume was a dead one, as he couldn't even compare it to any other that I played for him. He only spoke English when he wanted him to do something. He doesn't scare easily. When he has nightmares, he brushes them off, and anything that can scare the living hell out of anyone else, he probably wouldn't flinch. After this dream, I'm not even sure what to call it, he was jumpy. He couldn't focus on anything. He refused to go to the rooms in his own house, his room, the game room, downstairs bath, laundry, and even the back garden, as there were all places he encountered the man in his dreams. He also began telling me he was seeing things, and although I told him not to worry, I was getting progressively worried as the things he told me started to paint a picture that I was afraid of. He was seeing things, shadow figures in the corner of his eye, but whenever he looked at it, there was nothing. Blinds and plants would move in one spot where there was no wind, as if someone touched it and moved it manually. It was similar to being jerked, or if someone's fingers were tracing them. He doesn't live alone. His parents and his 2 brothers live with him, but he didn't go to sleep that same night. The occurrences happened in the day after he woke up, and the next day I came over to stay with him for a couple nights. Over the next couple of days, he was having sleep paralysis frequently, and he kept saying he was being watched. He was telling me to go because it felt wrong to put me at risk, as if I would ever leave him. When he was in the shower, I sprinkled holy water everywhere in the house and said prayers. He is Catholic as well as me, just for your information. After I was finished, I went through the house with Sage this time, saying good intentions and positivity. I paid close attention to all the rooms that he said he saw the man. Once I finished, I felt incredibly dizzy, so I laid down on his living room couch. I woke up from what felt like a quick nap and went to go make us some food. It was still daylight, so I had time, when I heard a crash coming from the upstairs and my boyfriend yell. I stopped what I was doing and ran upstairs to him. He was in the bathroom with a big cut on his hand. He was in a crazy amount of pain. I immediately went into panic and protect mode, trying to help him the best I could. When I heard footsteps coming upstairs, I thought it was his mom and dad coming home from work. I turned around, and down the hall, right at the top of the stairs, was a man. Tall, not slim, but not big, so average build. He had no features because he was only a shadow, and all he said was, "You should have left when I told you to." I felt fear I've never felt in my life and jerked awake, as that was all a dream. Note, this was my first ever experience with a dream inside of a dream, as I had never experienced anything like that before. I was under the impression I was awake. My boyfriend was sitting next to me. He was shaking me awake. He told me I kept calling for him. I was crying and I was shaking. That was the last time the man spoke to either of us, but he kept appearing. Almost everywhere we went, we would text each other or call saying we saw him from the corner of our eyes, but anytime we looked, he just disappeared. We finally put our foot down 2 weeks ago, when his little brother came running upstairs saying he thought he saw a man in the back garden. Whatever this thing was, he or it wasn't only playing with us now, but now his family. People who didn't even know of the incident. My friend's father is a priest. He came over 3 days in a row and performed rituals I'd never seen. He then blessed my boyfriend and I, and we haven't seen the man or had any other experiences since. My theory is I believe something sinister got attached to my boyfriend in that dream maze he had, and then began to grow stronger off his fear. Before attaching itself to me, having us both scared, it was able to present itself to someone who hadn't known of any of the occurrences. It's been 2 weeks and nothing has happened. It seems like the man is gone. But I honestly have never heard of anything like this, let alone experienced it. My boyfriend is a full-time believer now and listens to all my suggestions to keep him closed off to these type of experiences. We try to educate ourselves on the paranormal more and more every day so we can be more prepared. I don't know much about the paranormal, so if anyone has any suggestions at all, they would be so greatly appreciated. I hope you all have a great rest of 2020, the best it could get. Don't forget to vote and stay safe. The Cemetery, written by Haley Shills 1_4. Okay, so let me get this straight. I am a 15-year-old girl who lives in New Zealand, but when this took place, I was around 12 years old. In 2016, a couple days before Christmas, the worst thing happened to us. We found out my auntie died, which was on my dad's side, and they were very close. She was a jockey and she fell off a horse and it crushed her. And her favorite thing was the smell of lilies. The flower, of course. This will be useful later on. Anyway, after about 2 years after her death, we visited her again for Christmas, and we have been here to see her many times, but this time it felt different somehow. The air was heavy and I got this wave of dread. It was so overwhelming that I had to stay in the car for a bit. Once I thought that the bad feeling had calmed down, I decided to hop out and look around the cemetery. And as I was doing so, I smelled a familiar smell, like the smell of lilies. And at first, it was coming in a way that when I felt like I was being watched, but like I could tell that whatever it was watching me, didn't want me here, like I needed to leave. So I listened to my gut feeling and booked it back to the rest of my family. Not shortly after all of us were in the car driving back, we saw that there was something in the middle of the road. We stopped, but the longer we stared, we realized it was my auntie and she looked worried. About 2 seconds later, a car comes flying by at full speed and then she just disappeared. I'll tell you now, it scared me, and I couldn't sleep that night. But the longer I thought about it, the more I realized that she saved us that day. She really is looking over us. Thanks for reading. I just wanted to get this off my chest. I know you may not believe me because I wouldn't if I heard it, but this is 110% real, and it is still vividly stuck in my head till this day. Christmas Day Baby Teeth, written by Robin Quigg. Hi all, I'm kinda new to Reddit, but I just noticed the sub and thought I'd share an experience that happened to me a few years back that I absolutely can't explain. Just in case anyone has any ideas, or if anyone has had something similar happen to them. It's pretty much the only thing of this nature that has happened to me before. It was evening on Christmas Day, around 2012. I'm around 16 to 17 years old, and my mom and I are driving back home after spending Christmas Day with our extended family in Greater London. Me and Mom live alone with our dog, Pica. We are just chatting away about Christmas, and then the conversation moved to Santa Claus, and then we started talking about other mythical holiday characters such as the Easter Bunny and the Tooth Fairy. We talked for a while about how when I was young, my mom used to keep my baby teeth in a small jar with a blue fairy on top, very similar to the one pictured in the post. And I always remembered the jar from my childhood, but hadn't seen it for many years. I remembered that the last time I'd seen it, it was partially wrapped in black duct tape, obviously to stop it falling open, and if I had to estimate when, it was about several years before, probably around the time we were moving house and were packing, so around 2007, 5 years prior. We spoke for a while about baby teeth in this jar. My mom also stated that she hadn't seen it in a very long time and hoped it wasn't lost during the process of our house move. I remember even saying that I thought it was a bit gross that my mom kept all my baby teeth in the first place, and that they are just sitting in the house somewhere. Anyway, this conversation went on for a while, and then we moved on to talking about something else. We arrived home shortly after, walked in the front door, and greeted my dog as usual. My mom walked into the kitchen, and I followed immediately behind her. And there on the floor in the kitchen is the small jar, opened in 2 pieces, and all those tiny baby teeth were all over the floor. My first reaction was to think that my mom was trying to spook me, although she had literally never played a prank on me my whole life. But then I saw her face, and I realized she definitely wasn't. She immediately freaks out and starts ringing everyone she knows to tell them what has happened. My dog Pica was pretty old at that point, maybe 11-ish years, and was very docile when we leave the house. She literally would never go rummaging around through belongings or anything like that. It wouldn't really be possible anyway, as most of the stuff is kept in drawers and cupboards that she couldn't even access. Weird, right? I still don't have an explanation for it. My mom has a fair few unexplainable weird stories about things that have happened to her before I was born, and although I knew she was never lying to me, I was always a little bit skeptical about the circumstances and thought maybe she missed something which could logically explain her experiences. Then, when this happened, I thought, oh shit, maybe she's right, because I literally can't explain this. I hope you all enjoyed all of our haunted tales this evening. If you would like to discuss any of the stories on tonight's podcast, or just chat live with me, join our community on our Facebook group page and YouTube channel. I'm always live on there during and after the podcast every Sunday night starting at 7 p.m. If you have a haunting story of your own or artwork and you want to submit it for consideration for the future show, drop me a line on our Reddit page or email address. All our links are below in the description. Special thanks to Darken Mood, Darken_M00D, for all his wonderful art that you can check out on his Reddit page. I want to thank all our brave storytellers, for without them there would be no show. A detailed list of story credits are in the description. But most importantly, I want to thank you, the listener, for taking time out of your day to listen to Haunted Tales from the Old Rocking Chair. I hope you have a wonderful night, and as always, sweet dreams. Okay, let me turn me down. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed tonight's episode of Haunted Tales from the Old Rocking Chair. Melanie, I did write down your suggestion about Ichabod Crane and the Headless Horseman. I do have to check and see about the copyright on that. Some really old stories like that you can narrate without an issue about copyright infringement, but I have to check on that. So I can't guarantee that I'll be able to do that until I check that stuff out. But it's a really good idea. I wrote it down in my idea book. So I will be checking in, because it would be cool to do some sort of Christmas, maybe even the Christmas Carol or something for Christmas, because it is a scary ghost story. So I really like that idea. Like I said, I'm going to be doing the top 10 or maybe top 5. It depends on how long the stories are, because I only am given an hour for podcasts. So I will try to fit in as many of my favorite stories that I've done so far. I think that would be a really good Halloween episode. I've had a few people in my personal life ask me to maybe do some of my own personal experiences. So I might try to put some of those in, or maybe it depends on how I do the Halloween episode, because I haven't quite recorded it. I'm going to work on it somewhat today. It may not get done today, but I might go ahead and do a bonus story of maybe something personal that happened in my life, because I have a couple of those. So I haven't decided. Let me know if that sounds good to you guys, because I do have some good ones. Dealing with shadow people and possible multi-dimensional beings, and I don't know how else to describe them, but these watcher figures I've seen throughout my life. So, yeah, my family has asked that maybe I write out some of my stories and maybe do them for an episode. Also, when my kids were little, they had, how can I put it, invisible friends that come to find out that seemed to be related to people that had passed in places that we lived in things, which was kind of interesting. So if any of those type of stories sounds interesting to you, I might write some up so I can narrate them properly. I could do it off the top of my head, but I don't think that would be as good as if I wrote them out and narrated them. So just let me know if you think that's a good idea. Maybe I'll do a whole episode of nothing but my family stories and things that have happened in my family, if you're interested. I really, really, really want to do some more stories on my investigators. I know I've got a lot of paranormal investigators that listen to the show. If you guys have got some good stories, some experiences, because I know you've been to some crazy places, especially my Rift guys that go to Cabin 360 on the regular. I know you've got some good stories to tell, so come on now. Share them with your buddy here. But beyond that, I think that wraps up the show for tonight. I thought hopefully Jack was going to do his special thing tonight. Doesn't look like he's going to. Maybe Halloween. Maybe that'll be the time that he... Because it's a candle that's supposed to bleed out his eyes after it gets down so low. But you can see where it's glowing like it's trying to. It's just not there yet. But anyway, also, if you guys may possibly be interested in the future, I'm thinking about doing a separate YouTube channel and doing like maybe some gaming, some horror games, maybe some other stuff, challenges and life experience type stuff, which I'm thinking about doing. So a lot of people have been encouraging me to do that. If I do that, it'll be on a separate channel though. And I'm not going to do a podcast in relation to it. It's just going to be videos. But I'm working very, very hard, trying to get some equipment to be able to do that type of stuff. Because like I'm really dealing with like a 7-year-old laptop and a 3-year-old cell phone to do this. And literally my props are from the dollar store. They're old t-shirts, scarves, anything I can find I salvage for my backdrops and stuff. So I might even try to do a YouTube episode on my setups and things, because people seem interested on how, because like Jack I literally got from a dollar store, and all the candles and stuff I get from dollar stores, and everything you see in front of you is either salvaged from outside or it was bought from dollar stores. It may have cost me $10, if that, overall, counting everything. So I might do maybe something special sometime on YouTube for that. But just let me know what you want. If you got any ideas, drop me a line. You know, I'm always open to communication with people. Send me an email, which is on our group page. Join our group page if you're not a member already. Check out our YouTube channel, Haunted Tales from the Old Rocking Chair. I do upload the podcast after the broadcast in the evening, so people that miss it can see it over there, or I leave it and I share it out throughout the week, because Facebook, I don't want to go to Facebook jail, so I can only send out so many at a time to all the groups, because I know I have a lot of groups that support the channel right now that are looking forward to it, but I was just scared that it was going to crash the live tonight, so I just left it alone. And plus I had a lot more feedback that usually in interaction that I normally don't have, which I love, and I wanted to focus on you guys that are here in the moment during the live broadcast. So I will be sending the shares out sometime this week, and also I'll be trying to upload and work on that Halloween special for everybody. So I think that's it. I'm done running my mouth. I'm sure you guys have got things to do, but I want to thank you again for all your support and love. I do greatly appreciate it. You don't know how much it touches my heart to find out people actually care about my little show here and my channel. So I want to thank you personally, every single one of you, and especially you guys that come every week and stay for the entire podcast. That means a lot to me. So the final parting words, as always, sweet dreams.